It's like people who shoot film at weddings. It stresses me out to think that you don't know that you got the shot, you don't know that your exposure is correct. You have to then maybe travel through TSA with a bag of film that could be destroyed. You have to give it to like a bunch of schmucks like us to develop a Ritz camera who are gonna like maybe ruin your film. Then you have to get it scanned. There's just so many points where it could go really wrong that I would have so much anxiety shooting film.
I know, it's wild. Hey guys, welcome to the next Critique the Community. Today we're gonna be critiquing images taken with somewhat older cameras. I've tried to choose a range of images from like one, life cycle of cameras ago to film a long time ago. If you wanna be a part of the next critique, it starts right now at fstoppers.com/contests. And what's the genre?
We're going super simple. It's just gonna be portraits. So it could be absolutely anything. Multiple people, single person.
But not portraits of animals, portraits of people.
It has to be humans, okay. People.
Okay. And the reason why we're doing portraits is because of the sponsor.
So for the first place prize, we have Aftershoot, and they're going to be giving away $720 worth of their annual subscription.
Yeah, so Aftershoot, it's software that's going to help you quickly cull and then edit large groups of photos, specifically like portraits, weddings, events, stuff like that, where you're taking potentially hundreds or thousands of images. This software makes the editing process, 10, 20 times faster.
And I think they also have coming up in my notes, they're gonna start doing AI retouching. So once you can start to apply retouching on people's faces in a batch format, that's gonna be a huge game changer.
Absolutely. And they're throwing in other stuff too,
You're also gonna get a $500 Amazon gift card. So not only are you gonna be able to batch your images faster and get that process quicker, but you're going to be able to put $500 towards your next gear purchase, which is really nice.
Cool.
For second and third place prize, we're just gonna be giving away an Fstoppers tutorial. So you can go to fstoppers.com/store to check all of those out. And then we will tell you here in a minute the new discount that we have on an existing Fstoppers tutorial. So why don't we just jump right into this? And I don't even know what I'm looking at with this first image. Is this a mosquito?
So I've chosen a lot of wildlife images. I've kind of been on this wildlife kick recently. Have you seen my newest video?
I watched about half of it, and it seemed like you were super giddy.
I was
a girl on a first date, and you were like out there shooting all kinds of eagles. Is that what it was?
Well, it wasn't an eagle. It was an egret, apparently. I don't know anything about any animals at all. I like every white bird with a long neck. It's a stork to me.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've had this 400 to 800 millimeter lens on a Sony A9 III, and although I did get an A9 III when it first came out, I just did some preliminary tests with it, but I didn't really put this camera through the paces with the autofocus and the pre-capture and everything.
Sure.
So when it comes to wildlife photography, this setup is just, I kind of feel like it's cheating. And
it's made for sports, really.
Sports, I would say sports and wildlife, but heavy emphasis on speed, 120 frames per second in RAW, ridiculous perfect autofocus, pre-capture.
How heavy is this thing?
It's not as bad as you would think.
No, but still, you can't skip arm day.
Exactly. So, I'm very interested to get into this like philosophical debate with you on a lot of these images, because I've just used the absolute top of the line gear to shoot animals, and after a day of practice, it got to the point where I would say it was easy, almost effortless. A lot of these people have been shooting with older gear. Some of them, 2 of them, had to shoot with manual focus. So it'll be interesting when we get to those. But this image specifically caught my attention. We've done a tutorial on macro photography and bugs and all that sort of thing. The tutorial is called Mastering Macro Photography. And so I have a little bit of background with this sort of thing. My initial thought when I first saw this, 1, super interesting, 2, this is planted. There is no way this bug got caught with its wings and arms stretched out in different parts of this plant, right?
Yeah. This is the crucifix position.
Right, exactly. It's like, it's too good to be true. And a lot of macro photographers, there's this like debate going on within the macro community of whether or not you should be shooting dead animals or dead insects,
right?
Because a lot of what it takes to capture these images is ridiculous amount of photos so that you can focus stack and get something that would have like a fraction of a millimeter depth of field and actually get everything in focus. And if the bug is moving around or if it flies away, you can't do that. So a lot of these people kill the bug.
Right. From like a conservation standpoint, they say like we shouldn't be killing. I know that was Andres' point of view, who we did the tutorial with, is the animal has to still be alive. Like we should let it go off, and it's cheating if you're. Which
is funny because a lot of times it's like house flies and
insects you would kill.
Anyway. Or exactly, ants, you know, but whatever. I can respect that. But anyway, when I saw this, I immediately was like, this can't be real. Now, I'm not saying I know for a fact, and I would love for the photographer to actually tell us, but he doesn't. He just says, this crane fly has been captured by a Drosera, taken with the 1D Mark IV, which was purchased secondhand around 10 years ago.
I think what's happening in the photo is incredible, but it's so busy, which is kind of not something you see with macro photography, because so much of it is out of focus that it kind of makes the subject a little more simplified.
That's true.
But I almost feel like I want more dramatic lighting to where if you're gonna go over the top with this insect being pulled apart, I just feel like my eye is kind of going all over the place, and I feel like I lose something because of that. Maybe if this was backlit with a strobe that you're holding in your hand, it would be just too over the top, and you would say, like, this looks like something out of a horror movie. I don't know. It's just, and then you're also kind of looking at the underside of the insect, which isn't, I don't want to say the most beautiful side, because this is just a really crazy image to begin with, but.
I think potentially my biggest critique, and again, I know nothing about this animal or, you know, the intricacies of macro photography, but it just looks like this bug has been dead for months. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's alive right now and I'm just an idiot, but it looks like it's been in the corner of, you know, my living room, and I've been looking at it for weeks now, and I'm like, I should really get up and get that, but it's kind of gross. Maybe if I wait a little bit longer, my wife will get it. That's what I'm getting from this.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so awesome. And I love the colors in this. I love the fact that we got the plant coming from 4 different sides. I like the busyness of this image.
I guess my question is, the whole point of this critique was to see if gear really matters and if images could still be timeless. Yeah. And there's nothing about this image and the critique we've had so far that is making us feel like, oh, it could be done better, or the gear is lacking.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
It goes all towards the subject matter, and should this be taken, or is this a great photograph? Not, is this, you know, enough megapixels or enough depth of field or anything like that. So in that sense, I think this image still holds up. Like, I don't think it's lacking.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like this would look exactly the same on the most expensive modern camera today.
Are you ready to rate this?
3, 2, 1. I have no idea how to rate this. 3, I'm sure macro photographers would have their own rating system here. For so many reasons, this is amazing to me. For others, it feels kind of fake. Moving on.
Let's move on. We were just in Canada on a ski trip, and I bought my son a owl stuffed animal to bring back, and I thought he would love this thing. It's so cute. And then he doesn't really care at all about the owl stuffed animal.
Okay.
And then I was just up in Boston, and they have these stores for Harry Potter. I guess Harry Potter's, there's an owl or something. And so I see the exact same stuffed animal that I bought all the way in Canada on a ski slope. It's like, that's the same thing.
Every time we go on vacation somewhere, you're like, I have to buy all these gifts for my family members. And I'm like, Patrick, just go on Amazon. And you're like, no, I have to buy the Japanese one here and the Canadian one while I'm in Canada.
A lot of it is I like to open the bag and show that I came home with something. And
but a lot of times you're buying it for like a Christmas that's upcoming. So I don't know that it works like that.
We had this argument with wine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you can find every wine that's in France and in Europe. Right. In the States, and I was like, no, you can't. And then sure enough, you can't, kind of can, unless it's like a very locally made.
And Trump, he's about to make America super great. He's going to he was threatening a 200% tariff on French wines, so maybe not for long. So,
what's the story with this one?
This dude's name on Fstoppers is Basil. Don't know about that. He says he's on a safari, and somebody says, hey, grab your camera. I don't know why he didn't have the camera. And the guy says, I see an owl in a shed. I don't know. None of this makes sense. You're on a safari, but you left your camera somewhere. It's a safari, but there's a shed. I don't know. And he says he's shooting on the Sony a6400 with a Sigma 100 400mm lens, and he's trying to capture the owl flying. and he cannot get the camera to focus. And I mean, this is like the perfect example of like this new camera I've got here. The autofocus is insane. It's like, it's hard for me to even imagine it being better. I can see like a flock of birds all of a sudden just start flying. I will pick up the camera, and as I'm picking it up, I just start pressing the shutter button. And you know, I'm shooting like the grass, trees. I don't even know what I'm aiming at, and then all of a sudden, a bird's in the frame, perfect focus, and then it just locks the whole way. Every picture's in focus. So, this is an example of a shot where he wanted it flying, couldn't make it happen, but the bird finally landed, and he got this shot, which, in my opinion, might be better. I absolutely love this shot.
I've shot no, wildlife before, and so I imagine you just had this experience. When the bird is in flight, are you getting all these weird wing movements and the face? It's like so many variables are changing,
right,
that this seems a little bit more controllable.
Yeah, you would think, like, I spent a ton of time shooting birds diving into the water and getting fish. Mm-hmm. Every picture looks bad. You think it's gonna be awesome because it's like, whoa, they actually got a fish. But then you look at it and they look like their wings are broken and their legs are broken and their neck is broken as they're going in to get it or whatever. And so it's really the shots after they have the fish where they're taking off with the fish that are the good ones, in my not so expert opinion. Are you ready to rate this?
I think so.
3, 2, 1.
I'm going 3.
3.
Just seems like a pretty standard bird shot of an owl.
Maybe. I love the personality in this shot. I feel like it's such a beautiful portrait, and usually you don't want to crop a bird's body off like this, but it just works perfectly for this shot, in my opinion.
I will say, like, so is this camera film or is this digital?
No, A6400. It's a Sony, I believe, a crop sensor camera.
Okay. I was gonna say it has this kind of film look to it, but maybe that's just the.
Well, we're gonna get to some film.
Okay.
So this was taken by Don Walterstorff. This was taken on a Nikon D7000 with a 400 millimeter f3.5 manual focus lens. And I love the shot. Cute bird, amazing lighting. But then I noticed that he said he shot this with manual focus at 400 millimeters, which, and if it's 400 millimeters, is that really 600 millimeters on a D7000? Maybe so. I was very impressed because as I've been shooting these animals, I just keep thinking to myself, I could never get, like, not one of these images would turn out if I had to manually focus. I literally would not be able to see the focus. I mean, the depth of field is so shallow, even on this shot. The depth of field is so shallow. How do you, and maybe these ducks just weren't moving, and that's how. But how do you manually focus that with a digital camera?
I mean, your camera has to be on a tripod, right? So that you could even, because I can't even imagine holding the lens.
I mean, he's low to the water right here, it looks like.
Can you imagine holding that lens and trying to then...
I know, I've been doing it, yeah, it's impossible.
Difficult. And, the depth of field on this is larger than what, you had that Nikon 50 1.2 lens. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where you're literally getting part of the iris in focus, and it's, it's impossible to get people's eyes in focus. This, it looks like the depth of field might be like an inch.
Maybe.
But even then, can you resolve that through the viewfinder to decide if you're in? And then does it have a smooth enough focus ring to where you can make those slight little tweaks, or you're constantly jumping past it,
I found I had to do some manual focusing with this big lens because, like, if I was shooting a bird and there were tree branches in the front, it would always want to focus on the tree branches. So I would have to manually
push it past.
Yeah, go past the tree branches, and then it would see the bird behind it. And even that was hard. like getting it locked in, every little movement, like you said, I would just blast in front of and behind the bird. Are you ready to rate this?
I'm ready to rate this.
3, 2, 1. I'm going 4 stars again. I really like this. I mean,
this is my favorite one so far. I wonder if you could crop in a little more, or if you could brighten up the shadows a little bit.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with that because there's something that super high contrast and that direct sunlight on the subject, I think is what's making this so special for me. I agree with what you're saying. It's kind of weird that it's black back there, but maybe that's also why I like it.
Because if you pull up the shadows, you're going to then be exposing the front birds more, and they're going to be really out of focus, which is typically not going to look nice to have, you know, something like a subject matter out of focus. I mean, you got this guy on the far right. He's starting to get in focus, so it's kind of like...
Yeah, it's weird he's looking away.
Now, this image, if I just had to guess from looking at it, I would say this is film. Like, it just has something that looks like film, you know, I don't...
Well, I'll tell you what that look is.
Okay.
So this was taken by Felix Belloin, and I accidentally chose 3 of Felix's images because he had like 3 of the best images of this critique. My favorite image of his was of a fox, and I deleted it because like it was the least interesting story. And I'm like, you already have 2 other ones in here, so I got to delete the best shot. So, but if you guys want to see what I'm talking about, head over to fstoppers.com/contest. You can join in the next critique, but then you can also see this one as well, and you can see all the other submissions also. So he says this was taken in 2017, and this was taken with the Canon 5D SR. Now, I don't know anything, I can't keep track of like Nikon cameras and their specs and everything. I've never used Canon, so I don't know much about the 5D SR. But he says that it had questionable ISO performance above ISO 400.
Yeah.
And he was trying to shoot these red deer, and I don't know if it's like mating season or what, but this big guy starts going after this young deer that's near him because the young deer was getting near the female. And he was like, I didn't want to do it, but I had to. He was shooting with a 100 to 400 millimeter lens, and he was forced to choose ISO 6400, which made the image look horrible, he said, on that camera. But he needed those settings to get, you know, a fast enough shutter speed to freeze this, and I feel like he did a good job. Now, we're looking at this pretty low res right here, but I feel like it looks pretty good. But he says over the years, he's used better and better technology to try to save this image. So he used Topaz to remove noise and to upscale it. And so he's gotten it looking this good. But when you say it looks like film, I think that's the grain you're noticing from ISO 6400.
Did we ever totally figure out, like, I'm gonna sound dumb here, but there was an argument a few years ago that shooting at ISO 200 and then bumping it up to 6400 is exactly the same thing as shooting at 200 and doing it in software and post. Have we ever decided if that's true or not? Like, does ISO settings on your camera, like if he had shot this black and then just brought it in and changed all the settings, are you still adjusting the grain digitally pre and post, or is there a difference there? I think you did a video on that.
We did. We were testing that claim with, I think, the Nikon D850, and I thought we determined that it was almost true, like almost exactly the same. So what Patrick is saying is you could choose ISO 6400 on the Nikon D850 or choose ISO 100, and then in Lightroom or Photoshop just raise the ISO up, you know, and you'd have a underexposed image, almost black at ISO 100, and you just raise it up to 6400 and get the exact same result. And when I heard somebody say that, I'm like, there's no way that's true. There's no way. And then we did the test, and it wasn't 100% true, but it was like 90 or 95% true. And somebody had an explanation of why it wasn't 100% true. I don't remember.
It might be on specific cameras or depending on
I think every camera is different.
Yeah.
Every camera is apparently different. And to bring that up is interesting, actually. I also I've got a bunch of gear right now.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by camera equipment.
I know. I have some unreleased, like in there. That's an unreleased camera.
Oh boy.
Yeah, don't show them.
Don't show that.
But I've got the Nikon Z8, and I've been doing research about what?
Well, here's the box for it.
Yeah.
So the Z8.
Yeah. So I haven't used any of the mirrorless Nikon cameras. We left Nikon after the D850, we moved to Panasonic for video, and then after that we moved to Sony for video, and then the Sony's we're kind of great at everything, so now I just shoot exclusively Sony. But I wanted to give Nikon another try because Nikon was my first love. So I've been testing it out. It's an amazing camera, but after doing a bit of research, I believe it has the same megapixels as the D850 and slightly worse ISO performance. So the Nikon D850, which I believe is 7 or 8 years old now, takes better photos than Nikon's top-of-the-line camera today. Isn't that nuts?
I know people like Danny Diamond. He's moved to Sony for all the autofocus reasons, everything that you've just talked about. And he still likes the way the images are processed on the Nikon cameras. So I think he recently, maybe he moved to the 8.
Okay.
But he's never been able to get the raw image, which seems crazy to me, right? Like,
Yeah.
couldn't you tweak that enough, especially with all the AI filters and everything, to where you could get that perfect? But I know he's made many posts where he says, no, I cannot get the same.
Who knows?
So this is just salvaged
Yeah.
and degrained and everything, which is interesting because the first place prize for this contest is the full suite of Topaz Lab. So you're going to get it's gigapixel, which I think makes the images larger, and then you also get photo AI and then the video AI, which I think
They get that as well. Okay.
you get that as well. So I
Okay.
don't know if there's many video editors out there. That's what I've been using the most of, and it's pretty incredible to increase the value of a video in Premiere, the resolution, and then do it in Topaz and then compare them. It's night and day.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's really different.
And guys, if we give away an Fstoppers tutorial usually in most of these contests. If you want to go over to fstoppers.com/store now and check out tutorials that we've made in the past, I don't know if all of them now
Most
have
of them.
free lessons. So if you don't want to pay anything, you can watch one of the lessons, in many cases the first lesson, totally for free. So that could be like an hour of free photography education. So check that out at fstoppers.com/store. Have we rated this?
We have not.
3, 2, 1.
I'm going 3.
I don't know. I mean, the fact that this thing is running and charging and bellowing, it seems awesome. It does.
I just feel like for a while I thought that front hoof was like a tripod in the background, and he looks like he's falling over. And you were talking about the birds having the weird wings going into the water. It just feels like all of that's happening with his body position, and then if the little other deer was in the foreground and it might have more of a story. I don't know. I struggle kind of understanding what's happening in this photo.
What are you talking about? He's running deer.
Right, but is he being hunted? You're saying he's about to mate? It's just, I want more of that context to know what's actually going on here.
I mean, if you saw another deer, I don't think you would be like, oh, it's mating season and he's fighting for...
No, but it would at least, make me think he wasn't spooked or something.
All right, next up. So this is the same photographer, Felix Bellin. And the reason why I really wanted this shot in here is because we took this photograph with Elia Liccardi in Photographing the World 4, right?
Where we go to all the areas in the Americas.
I believe so.
Now a controversial place to film, I guess.
What do you mean?
All these countries are saying you can't go to America anymore. It's like on the travel ban or travel advisory, and we went and shot all these beautiful
It's cool
places.
because America's getting great, so it's all right. So he has this crazy game plan of getting this shot. And, this is a very famous location. Photographers show up here at night and camp out just to get this shot. And it is large, but it's probably not as large as people think it is. And most people get very close with a very wide angle lens. So photographers are fighting all over to get this exact same photograph.
To put it into perspective, I think we have a video somewhere on YouTube that shows what this is really like. But if you were to place this iPad on the front rock ledge there, it would actually take up a significant spot.
Yeah.
This looks like a human could step in there and still have the arch over their head, but really this is probably 4 or 5 feet tall max. So it's a very small arch, but it looks huge.
So, do you remember how Elia photographed this? Because I don't remember there being much compositing. I thought we just shot it.
I mean, there's a foreground and there's a background, so there's probably gonna have some focus stacking, and then to get the star, the sun to have the star trail, the star burst, you're going to have to shoot it like f16 or something.
Okay.
So I would imagine it's 2 frames, 1 shot focused far away at f16, and then another one focused at, f8 or whatever, closer, and you composite the 2 together.
Okay.
It's not that simple.
Well, like you're on the right track. But listen to this. I can't even follow all this. Phase 1, overexposed focus ramped capture from arch to sun. Phase 2, underexposed focus ramped capture from the arch to the sun. So I think what he's saying is he's gonna overexpose the shot, but he's also going to shoot multiple focuses. So maybe that's like 3, background, middle ground, foreground.
So you have the whole scene entirely in focus over 3 shots, but you have it exposed for the shadows and exposed for the highlights.
Okay. Phase 3, F20, overexposed focus ramped capture from arch to sun to get the sun star. Phase 4, F20, underexposed focus ramp capture from the arch to the sun to get the sun star. Phase 5, overexposed focus ramp capture from the arch to the sun, but with the index finger blocking the sun to prevent the lens flare. Phase 6, underexposed focus ramp capture from arch to sun, but with my index finger blocking the sun to prevent. So I think I could say this a little bit more easily. We're gonna shoot at f8 because we want it to be the sharpest image. We're gonna focus stack and we're gonna get it over and underexposed. Then we're gonna stop down to f20 and we're gonna shoot the entire thing focus stacked with the sunburst. And then I'm gonna put my finger in front of it. We're gonna focus stack again while over and underexposing. I don't exactly know what the purpose is of that, but he says he then put it all together in post. And you know what my critique of this was going to be?
It's not sharp enough.
Well, when I first saw this, I was like, it looks fine, it looks good, but it looks a little unedited. that was going to be my critique, and then I read this, and I'm like, what the heck? How many different shots did you put together?
Does it feel like it's tilted a little? Like I keep looking at this, and I know there's not a straight line, and there's arches, and there's cliffs and everything, but I keep thinking like, I think the left-hand side of the frame to come up just like 1 degree, 2 degrees.
Yeah, it does feel like that a little bit. Not bad.
And then like the foreground here, like I know we're looking at a low-res image, but it just doesn't feel 100% sharp from foreground to background. Which then made me think that this feels like an older camera. Like I know with all the work he just described, 1, maybe you had to do all of that with previous raw files to get it to work out. But then 2, maybe there wasn't enough resolution to give you, the sharpest image. But maybe you're going to tell me this was all done on film.
No.
This was done digitally.
5D SR in 2016 with a 16 to 35 millimeter f4 lens. All right, you ready to rate it? 3, 2, 1. 3. Have you given everyone a 3?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
All right, next.
So this is the first image with a human in it. I don't know that this really fits, but there's no other transition so far. We are also going to give a huge discount on one of our tutorials for this month, the month of April. We've done a bunch of different tutorials in the past. For this one, since the next critique is going to be portraits, I figured why don't we put on sale Clay Cook's tutorial. It's commercial and editorial portraiture. And so that's normally, what, $2.99 is what we sell it for. It's going to be $59 for the month of April. And you helped produce that one, right?
Yeah, Clay is an amazing fashion/portrait photographer. He does lots of on-location portraits, but then also he builds sets. And he works with teams of people, stylists, hair, makeup, and everything, just to get super polished images that you see in magazines. And so whether you want to shoot for magazines or you kind of want to take his lighting and post-processing techniques and put them in your own family portrait or wedding photography business, I think you're really gonna love this tutorial. Again, it's just $59 right now, which is the lowest price it has ever been. So you can check it out in the description or fstoppers.com/store. Before I say anything, I want you to give me your opinions on this.
Do you think you would like to be a war photographer, or would that be super depressing? And because we've known a couple of people who have been wartime photographers, and they've won esteemed awards and everything, and you really start to, like, there's a lot they won't talk about because it's left such an impression on them. They have PTSD and all that sort of stuff. But
no, I would not like it
in another life, like not today, but like in another life, if you had to go a different route.
Like when we invade Canada, to make them our 51st state, maybe I'll take the A93 and I'll shoot the battles.
I mean, I was thinking of that with Greenland.
Yeah,
you know, once we take,
and then Panama and Gaza.
Did we already get Panama?
Have we attacked Panama yet?
I thought it was handed over to us, but I don't know. I don't know. We don't know what's going on, right? Every day is different.
I know.
I mean, the light's a little flat, but I like it.
Do you think this is real? Do you think this is a movie? Do you think this is film, digital?
Now you have me questioning. I'm gonna say. Well, you can see the dust and scratches, but I was also one to love to put dust and scratches on some of my digital images. So I'm going to say it's a filter because that seems like the obvious decision. To not go with the obvious that, oh, it's film because it's got scratches on it, you know? Have we ever done a video where it's like, can you determine if it's film or digital? I'm going to say it's digital with an effect put on it.
You are wrong. This was taken by Jake Ald. He took this in Operation Desert Storm. This was shot on Nikon FA and FM cameras. I'm sure he doesn't remember at this point. He says his film was stored in ammo pouches and they had dust and sand all in them. He later scanned the negatives and didn't bother spending the time to remove all the dust and scratches. And again, this is another example of like, this is real. But because we now have software that we have used many times before that will add the dust and scratches on, when you see it, your mind immediately goes to, this must be fake. They're trying to make it look like film, but it is not. But this is.
Interesting.
So, a lot of these images, they're not like artistic wonders, right? They're kind of snapshots, but they're historical. They're of this meaningful moment in time. And so I feel like you have to critique it completely differently than an artistic photograph or a commercial photograph or a portrait.
And I imagine the portfolio that Jake has is unlike anything that the other photographers have.
Sure.
Know? They don't have a one-off shot of the moon with a bird. You know, like his portfolio is going to be, let me give you a lecture on the Iraqi war, you know?
Yeah.
And it's going to be like, these are the type of images that are in your textbook and you're reading about the invasion of Kuwait. And Kuwait, have you heard of that country in ages? I want to say there was something in the news just recently about Kuwait, but I was like, I haven't thought of Kuwait in like 20 years.
No, I don't know anything about Kuwait.
Do you know where Kuwait is?
No. Where is it?
I mean, it's right on the border of what used to be Iraq and Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf. Is it called the Persian Gulf? I think we had this debate when we were in Dubai once. They were like, some people call it the Persian Gulf and the other people call it...
I think we were out to dinner in Dubai and we mentioned the Persian Gulf or like some country and they were like,
that was offensive.
What are you saying? What did you say? And I was like, the Persian Gulf. And they were like, it is not called that. And I pull up Google Maps and I'm like, I'm not trying to make some political statement right now. The map says that. And then I think maybe they pulled up their map and it was a different name.
Yeah, what is it? It's like around the tip.
It's just like, we're making this super weird and political, the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America.
Yeah. Yeah, whoever writes the maps has control of the narrative. Right? Isn't that how it goes?
I guess so. All right. Are we going to rate this? I have no idea how to rate an image like this.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. It's a 3-star for me. I don't know.
4. I really like it.
What if I told you that this was digital and they added scratches in post? You still give it 4?
I mean, if it's still a wartime photograph and they were there, I mean, Jake's got to be, he's one of our older readers. Because, I mean, that was in 2000, that was a 91?
I don't know.
So, if it captured the real event, maybe I would say, well, then it's weird to put the scratches on a real photograph to make it, there's a whole other argument there. But,
sure. Well, interestingly enough, he says, currently he shoots with a pair of 5D Mark IVs. All right, next. I had to do this one as well. This was taken by Kieran Stone. And the reason I had to do this one was because we have also been here. This was another Photographing the World. Do you remember which Photographing the World it is?
This has got to be one. We went down to New Zealand, and this is the first landscape one we ever did.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I do remember in our tutorial, we shot it from the other side, right? Like we were
to the left.
We
right?
were on the left, shooting out towards the water.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was the way to shoot it. It's kind of hard for me to remember the details of being there, but
I remember
this.
the water being really low to where it does look shallow. You can see the rocks in the foreground, but I remember thinking the embankment on the left was very close and you could just walk out there. I tried to walk out there with my super fancy moon boots, and then they flooded and got soaking wet.
I hope he fills those up so bad. Patrick, just get out there.
And little funny story, I wound up buying those same moon boots in like size toddler for Elia's daughter.
okay.
And Naomi just messaged me and said, hey, she's outgrown these. Do you want me to ship these to you for Hudson? I was like, yeah. So soon Hudson will have a pair of the moon boots as well.
Awesome.
So we will be ready to go to Mars, I guess.
Kieran says this was taken with a 10-year-old Canon 5D Mark III and an equally old 16 to 35 millimeter lens.
Again, maybe this was more applicable to the last image, but I don't see any of these images and think you need a newer camera to get better results.
Yeah.
Which makes, I've been saying this for years, as fancy as your Sony and Nikon cameras are, I feel like they make life a little easier maybe with the autofocus.
Just in some situations.
And definitely with autofocus with video, like that's incredible. But for the most part, I'm like, there's nothing that the camera can't do that is preventing me from taking incredible photos. Most of what is preventing me from taking great photos is the conceptualizing of a good idea in my head and then the execution of going out and doing it.
Sure.
And so, I feel like a lot of people are like, if I just had a better camera, I'd shoot better weddings. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case at all.
Well, yeah, so these are all little things that I've been thinking about all the time. Is like if I got back into wedding photography, I would be pumped to have a new camera that has eye detect autofocus. That's freaking incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you never used it, right? When you were a wedding photographer?
No, so like
you're just moving the point, click, 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 like finding the person's face.
The processional and recessional, when you like stand at the front of the church and you have to get everyone coming down the aisle, especially the bride with her dad. That was one of the most stressful moments because even in bright light outside, there was a chance that the camera didn't want to focus and you're seeing it real time and you're like, just focus, focus.
And you remember like the older autofocus, like now it's silent and it's like this ultrasonic motor in the like nothing's moving. It's just like this. When we got into wedding photography, our lenses were like every time I would try to autofocus on somebody, and like maybe 70% of the time it would find it and it would stop. Yeah. But it would like 30% of the time it's gonna miss and then and the bride's walking down, everybody, and you're like,
there
just
were
focus.
Ultrasonic motors. Maybe like this is a few years before I got into it, but I remember you were telling me you got to get the ultrasonic motor.
Yeah.
And that was right when those were kind of coming out, but. The idea now of just like pushing the button and it just, I don't know, like there's a skill that will be gone that you don't need.
Yeah.
But then there's also a sigh of relief. It's like people who shoot film at weddings. It stresses me out to think that like you don't know that you got the shot, you don't know that your exposure is correct. You have to then maybe travel through TSA with a bag of film that could be destroyed. You have to give it to like a bunch of schmucks like us to develop at Ritz Camera who are gonna like maybe ruin your film. Then you have to get it scanned. There's just so many points where it could go really wrong that I would have so much anxiety shooting film. But I think shooting older DSLR cameras is kind of like that with these modern cameras where now there's no skill really required, right? The skill is knowing how a wedding works and how to prepare for the shot and how to frame something up quickly. But the mechanics of knowing how to focus and lock and pre-focus and follow focus, all that, like your camera just does that now.
I know. It's wild. But like I said, Nikon's newest camera apparently is not as good, you know, from a image standpoint as the Nikon D850. So if you don't need these ridiculous autofocus, 100 frames per second, raw, blah, 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 then you literally wouldn't really notice a difference,
I
you know?
still shoot on the D750.
D850, right?
The D850. It still feels so comfortable to me that it's
Well, then you'll love this. I mean, it is literally...
Well, I got one of these cameras like 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
And it drove me crazy going into the electronic viewfinder and wanting to switch between like, can this do this? When you put a trigger on top of it, is it smart enough to tell the viewfinder to not expose for the settings that you have?
I'm almost positive, but it has to be like the Nikon version, right?
Yeah, see, I don't want that. And I know you're talking about the Canon, what was the previous one they were just using? The
5D Mark III, 5D
the 5DR, I think.
5D SR?
SR. That's what David Bergman has for shooting concert photography. And I remember telling him, I was like, the Nikon doesn't do this, the one that I have. Maybe I had the 7, the previous one, but it was the flagship. And he was like, any trigger that I put on the Canon, it knows to switch and just give me the brightest exposure when I have the trigger on it. But if I take the trigger off, then give me the real exposure that I'm seeing through the lens.
Right. This is for flash photography.
Yeah, and so you have to set a menu for it, and maybe that Nikon didn't let you shoot.
No, there's got to be. You just didn't spend the 5 minutes to learn how to set a custom button.
Hours.
There's no way. There's no way. All right, should we rate this?
Let's rate this.
3, 2, 1. I think this is beautiful. I like this.
I'm gonna go. This is my highest rated image. There's probably thousands of versions of this that look equally as good, but I like it.
Here is the one that I've been most excited to talk about. So this was taken by Paul Delinas, and he said this was taken in 2003, and he's up at this nature preserve in Fremont, California, and he noticed an unusually large number of red-tailed hawks. And then he realized that, you know, wow, the moon's kind of coming up in this direction where all these hawks are, and he decides, I'm gonna come back the next day with a 300 millimeter lens with a 1.4 teleconverter, and he's shooting on the 6 megapixel Pentax. And the lens is manual focus. I'm like, how the hell did you pull this off? He set an aperture of f/22 so that he could get the bird and the moon somewhat in focus. He's shooting at 1/25th of a second. And I don't know that he mentions a tripod, but like,
because that would have been
the camera I was using at the time was my first DSLR, a 6 megapixel Pentax.
6 megapixels, you did say that.
But then he says, attached to the camera with an adapter, I had a Pentax 645 300 millimeter. You can put, like, isn't a 645 a medium format camera? So can you put a medium format lens on a Pentax crop sensor camera?
Seems like you could.
Okay.
As long as it shoots a larger projection.
So he doesn't mention a tripod here, but he says he's like running back and forth trying to line up these flying birds with the moon. He also forgets his good memory card, and he is forced to shoot in JPEG because his memory card can only hold 70 JPEGs or 12 RAWs. So he chooses JPEG.
The days of having a good memory card.
And he finally, like right before he gives up, he gets this shot. Now, what are your opinions on this photograph?
You want to know the first thing that I think of when I look at this image?
What?
I'm gonna be such an ass. You know, like at Halloween when you have those glasses that have the mustache and the eyebrows? That's what I see. I see like bushy eyebrows and a mustache in front of the moon.
So you just need like eyes and a little smiley face and it'll be finished?
I don't know, like we've gone to, I think they just had a WPPI a couple, like last week in Vegas. We've gone to these big photo conventions and you hear these classic photographers talk about their work, and sometimes you see the image and you're just kind of like, that's not a good image. But their story about it, you know, and at the time, like, this is all we had, and it's kind of like the story overshadows the image itself, but without the image, you can't tell the story. I feel like this is kind of that. Like, I don't like this image. I'm not going to rate this, like, highly, but this doesn't belong in your portfolio today. But the story about it is crazy, and, like, that's a fun story to tell. So, that's my thoughts with this, but I mean, he does have the bird completely stretched out and in a good position.
I know. And that's what's so difficult about images like this. 100% of the value of this image is the story and the difficulty of it. But from an image perspective, I could create this in Photoshop in 2 seconds. In 2 seconds, I could make this.
Not even in Photoshop, just on your phone with...
Well, of course, with AI, you could do anything. But, like, I could get a real image of a moon and a real image of a bird and just layer them on top of each other and blur the moon. And, like, I am recreating this exact thing, but it would be better in higher resolution.
When you were reading the settings about this, it made me wonder, you know, the depth of field and everything. He's shooting at f22, and as we described in the previous image of the arch, a lot of times you want to shoot at f8 because you actually start getting worse image quality with diffraction when you start stepping the lens down that low. And I just wonder, if you're far enough away, could you get away shooting at 2.8 or f4 or f8? Because the bird, like, at what distance is this the hyperfocal distance thing? Like, at what point does the bird and the moon actually start to get on the same plane of focus, which is kind of crazy to think because there's such a big difference there. But if you focus at infinity on a long telephoto lens, that could happen without needing the depth of field to increase that further. Does that make sense?
So before this last week where I've been shooting all these wildlife images, I would have agreed with you. Even though I'm looking at this now and you can pretty easily see shallow depth of field on that moon.
Yeah.
But I would have been like, yeah, both are basically infinity, right?
No.
Not with these ultra telephoto lenses. I don't know exactly the math of how it's working, but...
You have to be so much further away for that to work out.
I think so. I think so. Because, I mean, I will be so far away at 800 millimeters and I'll shoot a bird on a limb and a bird behind him on the next limb, totally out of focus at f8. So there is some craziness going on when you're shooting at that long of a millimeter.
2003, I was still in college, but around 2004 and 5 is when I started working at Wolf Camera before transitioning to Ritz Camera.
Upgraded, yeah.
And I do remember the days of, like, the Pentax and the Minolta being an option, and today we don't even think of those camera brands. Mamiya was, like, fancy, though. That was like a medium format, right? Yeah. No, this was just, you know, somebody come into the store and the salesperson would be like, now the Pentax, maybe because it gave you extra money if you bought it. But I was not in camera sales at the time, but it was like, the Pentax is my favorite camera. And I'm just thinking, like, wow, like, nobody shoots with Pentax. I don't even know if that company still exists.
I don't either.
Minolta was bought up by Sony.
Is that right?
That's how Sony first got into the digital game, is they bought Minolta and started using their mount.
Okay.
And I think even their hot shoe, which was kind of proprietary at the time, and now has gone back to being kind of proprietary. But anyway, it's just funny to hear a camera brand like that I haven't thought of Pentax in ages. But they were a big deal in the 90s.
That's wild. Dude, if Pentax is still making cameras...
I can't imagine that.
And we own fstoppers.com and neither of us know...
Do people out there know? I mean...
They definitely know.
There's a younger audience that might not know any of these brands. They've never heard of Minolta.
I know, but if Pentax is still making cameras and neither of us have heard of one in like 15 years, that's pretty wild.
I think our very first F-Stopper video with the iPhone fashion shoot, well, one of them. I think you make a joke about Olympus, right?
It's an Olympus, though. I mean,
It's an
who
SLR.
has that? Yeah, but who shoots with that?
Yeah, I made a joke about it.
Did they get back
That's
to you?
another one.
They kind of were upset about.
No, I don't know. I don't know if that. I don't remember.
But Olympus, is that?
I don't know if Olympus still makes cameras, dude. Like,
Before we get ourselves too deep in a hole, did we rate this?
yeah, no, we haven't. 3, 2, 1.
This does not belong in your portfolio.
I'm still giving it 3. I don't know.
The story's good. Maybe a portfolio of stories. Like
a portfolio of bad wildlife photos. I don't know.
If there's a section on your website that was like the past or challenges. I don't know what the title would be, but you could go back and have stories that go with images like this.
It's just, there's so many examples of this with photography of like, this is awesome because it's so hard and it took me so long to do this and it took me years of planning to do X, Y, Z. But in many cases, when you sell images, like if you were selling art, then the buyer wants to know it's real, right? They don't want this to be made in Photoshop. But for everyone else, if you're selling this commercially or whatever, they don't care.
Yeah.
They just want to sell their product using your image. And so it's just as technology gets better and better and these cameras get better and better, like I could take this so freaking easily with the Sony camera and then I could make this in Photoshop so freaking easily now.
So easily.
That it just...
Well, you know, the moon rises right up over there. And we have birds that look like this. So I think you have to show up to the next Critique the Community with your version of this image.
Maybe so. So
easily.
I know. I want to eat my words when I'm not even close to doing it. I mean, I could imagine you could sit there all day and a bird never even gets near it, but he was smart enough, patient enough to like find a location where he saw birds going in front of the moon, and then he made it happen.
Yeah. All right. Spoiler alert, one of my favorite ones. This looks great.
Yeah, this looks so good.
This has it's always, you know, you're trying to pinpoint what it is that makes a fashion photographer's images look great versus our fashion images, you know, and this has that thing to it. I don't know if it's hiding a lot by not showing her face and everything, but this feels really high quality to me. And I know your next question is is all of the exposure stuff on the side real, or is that an effect? Which I don't know. I think even some fashion photographers might like kind of fake that to like.
Well, what is it, Patrick? Is it real or not?
I'm not good enough to identify it, but I'll say it's real. I'm gonna say it's real.
You are correct. This was taken by Dan Howell, and he said this was shot on Polaroid Type 55 POS/negative film, positive/negative film. I don't know what that means. Using a Calumet 4x5 camera made in the 1980s with a Schneider 150mm lens, bought brand new in 1995. All natural light. The negative from the Type 55 carries a good amount of sharpness and dynamic range. The negative was processed in sodium sulfite to remove the developing gel. Once dry, I had a high-resolution scan made at my film processing lab, preserving the iconic film edge.
There was a debate on one of the photography subreddits recently, and I'll probably get it wrong, but the debate went something like this. This guy shot an event, a wedding or a portrait session, on some kind of crazy black and white film that had a different developing style, and he sent it to the lab. But he didn't mark what chemistry was supposed to be used, but he wrote like black and white or something. And the lab developed it using the wrong chemicals and then destroyed the film. And so the debate was, who was really at fault here? Was it the lab because they should have known that random film process that he had and they should have used the right chemicals? Or was it him because he should have put something all over it that it needs this, 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 and this, you know, like it's not going to be your normal black and white developing. And I don't know, we go back to my anxiety of shooting film and how I would never trust me or a developer to get it through the whole process, you know, start to finish.
It's horrifying.
You just named a bunch of stuff that I don't recognize at all.
Yeah, I don't think you ever got to work with a photographer that had some of this stuff, and I did. Right at the beginning of my career, I worked with a photographer named Milton Morris. We have the exact same last name. Unrelated, I believe. And I don't know if he's still shooting or not. You guys can look him up. But at the time, he had a gigantic, large format camera. Now, this, it says it's a 4x5 camera, so it's relatively large.
Like an 8x10 or
yeah,
something.
his, I think it was an 8x10 camera. And he had these Polaroids that would go in this camera. And I'm trying to remember how much it cost. It was like $20 every time just to put one in, you know, and take a photo. And he would put the Polaroid in, take a shot, wait for the Polaroid to come out, and then he would look at the exposure and the lighting and be like, okay, now I'm ready to put film in the camera and actually take a shot.
Because the film was even more than $20?
No, it was just like, before I ask this high-level executive to come in here and like, we're gonna work through this, I wanna make sure it's all dialed in. You know, it's kind of like what we do with digital cameras. We make sure that our lighting and everything's correct before we actually start shooting.
Yeah.
You just had to do it with Polaroid back then. And digital was just getting started when I was working with him, but you know, he was a purist. He had digital, but for his big clients, he still shot medium and large format.
So you had to set that camera up and help, or you just were like doing other stuff?
I was knowledgeable enough to hand him things that he would point at.
Okay.
I never touched that camera.
No.
I never put film in that camera. He would put something in my hands and I would do this, and I would stand next to him, and then he would grab it from my hands, and then he'd be like, move that chair, and I would do that.
So let's bring this conversation in a different angle, but similar angle. Okay, so we're not talking about like, does the old gear look better or worse, but there is a narrative that medium format and certain gear gives a look that can't be reproduced with digital, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like this still looks modern, like this looks clean, this looks great, but does this look the way that it looks because it's medium format and it's all this stuff that I have never used before? Or if you took a digital camera like the Sony and you had the model sit in this same environment, it looks like an awesome set, and the backlight is coming through and giving an awesome look, and you don't expose for her face, and you don't go into Lightroom and pull up all the shadows and try to make this a correct exposure, and you let it do this. Would it look identical, or can you only really get this look by shooting a 4x5 camera?
I think you can make it look like whatever you want. And I don't think there is a medium format look. I think there's obviously a film look. I don't know if that's what we like about this. I don't know if the lighting is super interesting. The fact that the model is so underexposed, but there's enough detail in her face that I love it. I feel like it's perfect. I would never do this. I would take this test shot and then I'd be like, all right, we got to get a flash on her. And then I would ruin the mood.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I love it. And then just the way the light is blowing out behind her looks so good as well. I'm not going to step out on a limb though and say you cannot get this with digital. I don't believe that.
I think with medium format, especially as the sensor increases, there starts to be a change in like the depth of field, maybe.
Sure.
It becomes more or less shallow. But I think you've done tests, Fstoppers videos, where you've tried to match that with, a 35 millimeter digital and then a medium format. And it seems like with the right lens choice and subject to distance, you can get that to work itself out too.
I believe, and I'm sure I'll be corrected in the comments, I believe that you can make shallower depth of field images more easily with 35 millimeter full frame lenses than you can with medium format and large format lenses.
Because they're more readily available? They've made faster lenses to accomplish that versus what they had in the past?
Yeah, like Hasselblad just sent me, I can't remember the name of the camera now, but they just sent me like a 70 millimeter equivalent prime lens. Maybe it was 70 millimeters, so it was similar to a 50 millimeter lens. What's an aperture on a 50 millimeter lens for 35 millimeter? What's the cheapest? What's the cheapest one?
1.8 is what I want to buy.
What's the most expensive one?
1.2.
1.2, right? I think the one they sent me was like f4 or f5.6 or something, and like that's as wide as it gets. So it's literally a deeper depth of field, slower image out of a medium format camera. I don't know where this theory came from that medium format looks shallower.
You could take this image all day. It's just, is the camera holding you back, or the film camera holding you back, or is it the execution of getting the model and putting her in the position?
Yeah, getting to a spot that looks this good.
Yeah.
Getting a model that looks that good. Getting a dress that looks that good. Setting it up with the background and like, are those doors in the background on the right? I don't know.
It looks like she's just in some like art studio.
Well, it looks like a matte painting on the ground. So it kind of feels like a photo studio, but who knows? All right, are we ready to rate
Yeah.
this? 3, 2, 1. I'm at least 4. I was thinking about 5.
I mean-
I feel like this is my favorite image.
Yeah, this is awesome. All right, next image. You're saying we only have, this is the last one?
That's it.
Back to the snow owls. This looks so modern to me. I don't know if it's just the white
Yeah.
and the sharpness
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
color,
It
but
looks good.
this does not look like it used. And I know I said you could use an old camera from the pandemic, you know, whenever you upgraded. So far, all the cameras have been fairly old, right? Older than 10 years.
Maybe.
I haven't really, maybe that one Canon camera is suspect, but
This was taken in 2014 by Dave Vichich on the Canon 70D with a 100 to 400 millimeter lens. He said it was the version 1. The owl had just had a meal and was heading back to its favorite viewing spot. So, I mean, this kind of disproves, and again, we don't have the high-res shot, so I don't know if the eye of the bird is in perfect focus. It kind of looks like maybe it's not, because those sticks look way sharper than that bird does.
yeah.
I think that is also something that we take for granted, is just how sharp modern images are. When we were shooting weddings and portraits and stuff, we would let like back focus images slip through, you know, like, oh, it's pretty good, you know, like, oh, it's a cool moment, it's good enough.
Yeah.
You know, now it's like, if you focus on somebody's ear and not their eye, you can see it because the
Yeah.
cameras have so many megapixels.
Well, it's funny too because there's we've heard many photographers say that there's a trend now of images that look like mistakes. That's what's in demand. Forget who we met with, and they were like a lot of wedding clients now. They want images that have a shake and a movement and out of focus, and you're like, what? How could that be true? And I haven't shot a wedding in a while, so I don't know if those clients are abundant or there's just a few of them out there.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an aesthetic where when things are a little out of focus or not in focus at all, like soft, that gives a vibe. And I think with wedding photography, it's kind of a cool vibe. It makes it a little, because when something's super sharp, it almost doesn't feel timeless anymore. It feels hyper realistic.
That's true.
I feel like.
Yeah.
And so when you see an image, you know, you can go back to the Sports Illustrated covers and you look at like pictures and like these images that are on the cover of magazines and you're like, that is insane. Like it looks like you've cropped in 1,000%.
Right, it would never fly today.
Right, but those were iconic images. I mean, the Muhammad Ali, you know, picture, all those are so soft and not in focus, or they just can't be resolved to the same way that you can today. Yet those look so classic. And anyway, this image looks really sharp to me. I mean, this looks like a modern image just based on sharpness. But you said this was taken when?
2014 with a Canon 70D.
11 years ago. I don't know if 11 years is we've gotten so good in the last 20 years.
So something that I was thinking about, especially with this new Nikon camera that takes technically worse images than the Nikon D850, we kind of lost interest in still cameras. When was it? 10, 12 years ago? It just kind of felt like there was a while there when we were wedding photographers that each time a new camera would come out, you would get an extra stop of ISO performance.
Yeah.
Which, as a wedding photographer, was like the most important feature possible, right? And then it started changing, like they couldn't really make the ISO that much better, so they would give you like 2 more megapixels. It'd go from 10 to 12,
Yep.
and 2 or 3 years, you'd get 2 more megapixels, and you're like, okay, this is all right. But then you start looking at the images side by side, and you're like, they look the exact same. What am I paying? Like, I don't even need to upgrade anymore, and you kind of lose the excitement. It feels like the last 8 to 10 years, we've moved from DSLRs with physical moving shutters and mirrors and prisms and everything to now mirrorless cameras. We're very quickly moving away from shutters completely. I didn't realize the Nikon Z8 doesn't even use a shutter. It kind of works like the A9 III. It's just reading off the sensor silently, which is super cool. But to get the camera to do that, you're giving up ISO performance, you're giving up dynamic range. In many cases, like with the Sony, you're giving up a lot of megapixels.
Aren't some of the cameras are giving up the ability to do the infrared focus?
Infrared autofocus
That was
assist
huge
doesn't
with
work
weddings,
anymore.
yeah.
And maybe it's not as big of a deal anymore because the camera, you know, like the lenses or the flashes don't use infrared autofocus assist now. They use just like a
But that's worse. LED light.
potentially.
But when you're shooting somebody candidly and you don't want they might know that there's photographers around them, but they're focused on their wife dancing or whatever. I don't want a light then illuminating them to get the autofocus.
You can still see the infrared. I could see the red grid showing up on people.
It felt like it wasn't as it wasn't as big of a problem. But the big one though with our cameras back in the day was that you could get better video, and so we started shooting hybrid where I could take some video clips now, and they were 720. They were 720 when we started Fstoppers, and they moved to 1080, and it was 30 frames a second now. Oh my gosh, we got 60. We could do slow motion. And so as a wedding photographer, you started to offer these other services. And then did I show you this one here? This is kind of wild. I've been thinking about this a lot. If you were a wedding photographer and you just took still images, but now you could take an image and you could make it look, I mean, maybe it's not realistic enough to where you would know it's AI, but there are applications now where I can take still image of my dad as a teenager and automate it to where he's now in a video. I've never seen my dad walk with his grandparents like that. It just opens up all these possibilities to where you could just take still photos and focus on that alone and not have to switch over to video, because perhaps you could take one frame and then a frame that happens a split second later and have AI fill in what's in between, and it would look incredible.
Now, we're not quite there yet, because you took one of your wedding photos of you and Kristen kissing.
I've done
and
two.
You made that a video.
Did I show you this one?
Yes.
Where it's clearly not us. Like,
exactly.
Look how bad that looks.
Exactly. But it's
then
still amazing.
I did it again, and that one does look like us. Look how good that is.
A little, yeah. It's like, but the stuff's flickering.
With this, so I'll not a plug for this company, but what is this app? Kling, Klingai. You can submit one image and just tell it to make this a video. Or you could say start with this beginning image and then end with this ending image.
Okay.
And if you were doing burst shots of 10 frames a second or whatever it is you shoot at a wedding, and you picked a real beginning and end shot and then told it to make it a 5-second video, I'd love to actually try that.
How much does the software cost?
This is charging you per credits. So to do a 10-second video, it might cost like $10.
Okay, so it's relatively expensive.
Maybe it's $2 to do that, but
okay.
It's all going to get cheaper and cheaper and be better. And so anyway, it's pretty incredible what you can do. But I have been over new cameras for a good 5-10 years. I mean, I haven't even sold my D850.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's good enough.
Right.
And I do know the autofocus now, especially when I'm trying to shoot my son. If it can lock on his eye and just be ready at any moment, that is huge. But that's the one last little feature that I think I really care about.
I know.
And it hasn't been enough for me to buy a new Nikon camera.
It gets me wondering, what is next? Is it just AI? Is it like the camera is fine, but now we're just going to put like little computers in the cameras, and then you can just tell it to do stuff to a crappy image on the device?
Probably. And I don't know. Like, we're moving away from realism to just impressing our friends and have something cool, having something cool. But I feel like it's been like that with the phone too. I do not care about the new phone technology. Your phone is supposed to do some AI stuff that I don't understand why the older version.
I don't quite understand why they can't do it either.
But I don't see any real difference between the last couple generations of the iPhone. It's like they're not doing anything. I mean, they changed the charger.
Well,
Which
that's
is
pretty
huge,
big, yeah.
Because now I can easily. The hardest thing I had with the iPhone was getting files off of it. Now I just connect it to a chart. I just connect this all the time and just dump it to an SD card.
Oh, really?
And it's so easy. It's changed the way I use my phone.
Because you're still on Windows. I AirDrop stuff from my phone to my Mac, but you're still on Windows. All right.
We got to rate this photo. We never rated this.
Let's rate this photo. 3, 2, 1. 4 stars. I love this image. All the white. I think it looks awesome.
The owl's eye difference is might keep me from going to a 4. That kind of drives me crazy. It makes me.
It's just because his head is sideways.
Yeah,
right?
it looks like he's winking at me, or like something about it is. What do you think's going on? Do you think there's like a mouse in there, or
the guy said it's his favorite lookout spot, whatever that means. All right, it is time to choose the first, second, and third place. Third place and the winner of a free Fstoppers tutorial. We're gonna do this running deer by Felix Bellon. Sure, I'm massacring that name, but congratulations. Figure out which tutorial you want at fstoppers.com/store. Send me a private message, Lee Morris on fstoppers.com, and let me know which one you want.
Second place is going to be the iSteady M7 gimbal. So you can put your iPhone on there, and then you can also use their camera on top to track the movement, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I did a review on this recently, and this thing's like $300. So pretty cool gimbal, especially if you just want to travel and do some iPhone videography and that sort of thing. So second place is going to be Dave Fitchich. Did we say that the same
with
way?
the white owl. This is potentially my favorite image, but love it. I hope you can use the iPhone gimbal if you shoot video. It really is a game changer when it comes to stabilizing footage. And first place, and the winner of the Topaz Suite. You're gonna be able to remove noise, upscale with AI all of your images. You're also gonna be able to do it with video as well, which is a game changer.
And you also get the same iSteady M7 gimbal as well. So first and second place get the same device there.
We're giving it to Kieran Stone, and I don't know if this is fair because this is an image that, you know, like you said, thousands of people have taken, but overall, something about his shot of, is this the Wanaka tree?
Yep.
It just stood out to both of us. I think it looks awesome.
So congratulations to all the winners. Definitely send Lee an email if you need the physical
Not
product.
an email. Personal private message on fstoppers.com.
And then send your address and your phone number and a bunch of details if you won first or second place, because you will need
Send it all to me.
to have that mailed out to you with the gimbal. And if you want to be a part of the April contest, head over to fstoppers.com/contest, where you can enter in your favorite portraiture. You're going to be able to win a $500 Amazon gift card and a full year of Aftershoot, where you can use their software to improve your culling speed, get better images, and hopefully soon start doing some retouching, which is pretty cool. So apply for that. We look forward to seeing those images. And of course, subscribe to our channel below for more videos like this, and head over to fstoppers.com for daily content in general.
See you guys.